Hey, Dino, how are you?
I'm amazing, absolutely amazing. It's Friday. Been for a ride this morning, got my 60 Ks in, went for a swim in the ocean, about to get on the tools with a couple of clients and then go to lunch. So does it get any better? Life as a salesman.
Yep, and you're all dressed up, ready to go. How's that? Hey,
Oh, not quite, mate. I haven't got the tie on yet.
Good man.
The client I'm going to, they all wear suit and tie. I love it. I feel at home.
Yeah, nice work.
Not like you bums in Sydney.
Well, I mean, we've got the bushfire smog thing happening at the moment. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
God, it's terrible, isn't it? All right, what are we on for?
Okay, so we've got a bunch of questions to answer. The people have sent through some questions based off our webinar around Cadence.
Yeah.
And they're actually really interesting, no surprise. So let me just refer to them. So the first one was, hey, Mark, will this work in a B2C? Will a Cadence still work in a B2C situation? So I'll hit the ball straight over to the court to you. What do you think, Dean?
I would say absolutely. Look, the only difference between B2B and B2C is that fundamentally your value proposition is going to be different because what you're selling is a consumer-based product versus a business-based product. But the simple concept is that you are trying to solve a problem for that person.
Yep.
And I think that question came from a mortgage broker, didn't they?
Yeah, it did. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, it just means that basically you're targeting the message to an individual, but it's if you're a mortgage broker, it's, hi, Betty, was keen to chat to you because I've been doing another number of mortgage reviews with other clients who have been very, very surprised at just how much markets have moved and how many other opportunities there are. That it's a free service, and I'm happy to basically come and meet you whenever it's convenient. Please give me a call back on blah, 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 blah. Right? So it comes down to making sure that your target message is valuable to the person you're speaking to. And as long as you've got that right, it doesn't matter what market you're calling into.
No, I'd agree. So, and I also think that it works across the different multi-touches, right?
Yes.
So I think that's a big part. So I think you can absolutely so in a B2C environment, particularly for something like mortgage, where you're not, you're only engaging a certain number of people every day. It's not, hundreds of people. So
totally.
you could definitely, connect with them on LinkedIn, for example. You could definitely find them on social media. You could definitely view their profile, which is one of my steps. You could email them, you could call them, you could send them a text message potentially. And I think it's
bonus round. Bonus round, we go back to the mortgage broker. Okay, you could send them a valuation report on their area and say, hey, Mary, I've highlighted your suburb. Some interesting things going on here that I thought you'd enjoy reading about. You could send them a report on the best rates and say, hey, Mary, I'm not sure what your rate is right now, but check out this rate that I just secured for a client from XYZ. Yep. So there are, it's just coming back to what message would your target market find valuable and interesting. And as long as you start there, it doesn't matter who you're calling.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, there's probably some hesitancy about using different forms of outreach.
Yep.
And I've been, in the last 2 weeks, I've had text messages from Harvey Norman, Bow Repairs. I can't remember what the third one was, but just in the last couple of weeks. So
absolutely.
And they are spam emails, right? So they're just saying, hey, Mark, we've got a new Harvey Norman store opening up in Alexandria, and somehow I'm on the list, right? But if it was significantly more personalised, then I think that'd be even more valuable than just the ones that I'm getting.
I'm not resenting the stuff that I'm getting, but I'll tell you what it is doing is it's making things top of mind. I got something from JB Hi-Fi the other day, and if I had to buy a TV right now, I know that the first thing that would come to mind is I'm going to JB Hi-Fi.
Yep.
So, it's interesting. Even the stuff that's a little bit spammy, they're normally advertising, hey, Dan, we've got an amazing special, or you should check this out, is still making them top of mind, and I'm not resenting them. Okay,
so that's a yes to the B2C.
Absolutely.
Love
Absolutely.
It. All right, so I've got another one from Trent. So Trent says, so I'm just reading, okay, where do I find email addresses? So we talked a lot about emailing people in the Cadence.
Yep.
And he says, I'm currently using hunter.io. What else can I or should I use to be able to find email? So, man, I'll go first with this one. So
it's your
hunter.io I find is really good. What that does is it uses a predictive tool. So, it'll look for...
Yep.
So your email address is, Dean@SalesITV. Mine is Mark@SalesITV. So if we had a Gary, it would say it's most likely that it's going to be Gary@SalesITV. So it's predictive. The tool that I use the most, though, would be a company called Lusha, Lusha, and that's a Chrome plugin. It works really nicely over the top of Linda, and what that does is it pulls down data from various lists on the internet and basically supplies you with what it thinks are, Dean's email address and mobile phone number and that sort of thing. So that's a pay-per-play, so it costs you about $50 a month, and I find that to be reasonably accurate. So 75% of the time it's accurate. And if you're not in a position to be able to use either of those tools, then there's the best hack. There's two other hacks. One is the inverted commas in Google. So, inverted commas, dean@salesitv.com, parentheses, close that off, and then do a Google search, and then that'll search everywhere to try and find that exact match.
Yep.
So if you think that that's the way your email is set up, so it could be dean.mannix or dean.m or d.mannix, whatever. So you can try Googling those. That's a longer way to do it, but manually. And then the fourth one that I use quite a lot is I would then put, if I'm sending you an email, I put Dean at SalesITV, and then in the BCC I might try the others. So I go, d.mannix, mannix.dean, dean. And the five of them in there, then send the email. You'll get a bunch of notifications back saying these email addresses weren't correct, and you'll be able to then determine which one was the correct one.
Yeah, 100%.
So both of those last ones are a bit more manual hacks.
Yeah,
but that's
$50 a month. My strong recommendation would be that anybody who's actively having to prospect for new business should be using a service like I'm Australian, mate, so it's Lusher to me. And because I've certainly had a lot of success and found that very effective when I was building those lists and doing that sort of work.
Yeah, and I use Lusher because it's easy and it's accurate. So
yeah.
Okay, so hopefully that's answered that for Trent. And I've got another one from Tim, which was kind of on the same thing, and he's saying we have a focus on being compliant with our outreach, and he was talking particularly about direct mail, and saying that he doesn't want to breach the laws, which is the Anti-Spam Act from 2003 here in Australia.
And none of us should.
I agree. Specifically sending those direct mail. So how we spoke about, print off a white paper and send something to Dean saying, "Hey, Dean, I thought this was of interest."
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that for Tim?
All right. Well, so I'm not going to get into a legal diatribe about this because everyone's got their own legal team and we can't provide legal advice. And I guess got to make that clear. But I think there's a couple of things. One is a lot of people use this as an excuse. Literally, they just go, "Oh, we're not allowed to do that by law. Great. Now we don't have to do any new business prospecting," and away we go. And they never really push back on the compliance team or have a serious conversation within the business around, well, how could we do this compliantly? And is it in fact non-compliant? Because the simple reality is, especially in B2B, 9 times out of 10 when I've had these debates, I've actually proven that it is compliant. And it was people's reluctance to make cold calls that caused them to just accept that as an excuse. So I think that's the first thing.
Yeah. And go on.
Yeah. The second one is I think that people need to get a little bit smarter about the way that they're marketing and the way that they're doing these things. So as an example, we've just gone through what looks like some very major changes in the life insurance space around no outbound calling within the life insurance space to sell life products. Now, I think that basically businesses and salespeople have to adapt to adding value as part of their marketing process and calling around that value add. So what I mean by that is if I was selling life insurance and I wanted to do outbound prospecting, what I'd be doing is I'd be creating a fortnightly webinar where I actually educated people on how they should, what they should consider in terms of life insurance, how they can do their own quantification of how much life insurance they need, and five mistakes they don't want to make. So I'd create a fortnightly webinar. And then my outbound marketing, my outbound calls would not be to sell life insurance. My outbound calls would be to say, we're having an educational evening on life insurance. Thought you might be interested in finding out how to quantify how much you actually need, how to compare that within your super fund. And if you're interested in coming to the webinar, may I send you the link? Now, once again, I'm not a lawyer. I can't say that that's totally compliant, but I would suggest that I'm not trying to sell life insurance. I'm trying to invite you into an educational event that might be of value. And I'm probably going to have a pretty good hit rate with that. And I'd suggest an even better hit rate than if I'm ringing up saying, do you want to buy life insurance?
Yeah, look.
So people need to be a little bit more innovative with the way that they're actually doing these calls and doing this marketing. And rather than trying to get to fourth base, on the first call, actually, suggesting a real value-add educational process on the way through.
So I think that, the Anti-Spam Act 2003 is targeted. The reason why it's written to stop, people just spamming people. So getting a list of 1,000 people and sending the SAM email out to everybody, right? So just what we would call spam.
Well, email wouldn't work if they hadn't done that, right? Because you would be getting literally 5,000 emails a day from every man and his dog who's just churning stuff out, right? So the Anti-Spam Act had a very functional and effective use in the marketplace. It wasn't meant to stop people doing business. It was meant to stop idiots just clogging up your inbox. Correct.
And we talked about, reaching out to 5 new people a week. So we're nowhere near that, the Spam Act as far as volume's concerned. And we also spoke about the quality of messaging, smarter targeting. So I think, did we use the dentist example? I can't remember. Was it the dentist example? No, it was
I think childcare, or we talked about childcare.
So think about the customer, right, the prospect. So if I own a childcare centre and Dean's ringing me up saying, look, we've got some software that's really going to help you be more effective in the way that you manage your enrolments and your expenses specifically for a childcare. Are you going to go, well, man, stop spamming me? You're probably going to go, no, okay, this is somebody that's got something of real value.
But especially if it's a handwritten Post-it note on top of a brochure.
So I think you're right. Don't use it as an excuse. And if you're truly targeted, then I can't see how you're going to fall into that Spam Act, either by volume or by content.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Can't provide legal advice, but I've got to say, I think too many people just use it as a blanket excuse.
Yeah, and look, I mean, some of these organisations are quite large and they're very focused on being compliant, and sometimes that focus is a little bit too tight. So, if you went and had a conversation with the person, so Tim specifically, if you went and had a conversation with the person inside your marketing department and talked about how you wanted to do that more personalised marketing, you might find that they're comfortable with that. But, you need to stay inside the regulations of your own organisation, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. But you need to be educated enough to go and have a really robust debate, if necessary, to talk about, well, how do we do this as opposed to why can't we do this?
Yep.
They're two very different states of mind. And I think, once again, sales managers and general managers and sales leaders need to take responsibility for opening up removing these barriers and removing these excuses. And that means that they need to be able to have more intelligent conversations at that level, rather than being lazy and going, well, if we can't do that, what do we do? I don't know. It's all too hard. Marketing, give us some more leads. That's a crap reality.
All right, and then the next question, which I've left this to last because I think this one will be the most valuable, and it was, you might remember when we had a conversation and I said you only need to prepare one script for your telephone calls because we're assuming that you're not going to get through, right? So I've got a script. Dean doesn't answer, we go through to the voicemail, and I then said, well, you also need to only have pretty much one voicemail, and then you said, no, you want to have more than one. And so people have had somebody send me a message saying, hey, Mark, can you expand on that a little bit because it looked like it was unclear.
Yep.
So what I meant by the telephone script is you only need to have one script. We've got 4 telephone calls sequenced across the cadence, okay? And we're going to assume that the first one, for example, no one answers. So then we go and leave a voicemail.
Yeah.
We then call them the second time. We're assuming that they don't answer. We're going to leave voicemail. Third time they don't answer. But if they pick up on the second or the third phone call, we don't need any other scripts because we're going to have a conversation. So if you haven't picked up the telephone, I haven't actually said anything, right? Yeah. So then on the second call, if you don't pick up, I haven't said anything. So if you pick up on the third, for the conversation that you're going to have, that you've scripted out in preparation for the first phone call, never happens. So then if you do pick up, for example, on the third phone call, you just have that conversation that you're always going to have.
Understand.
Okay. Then where I said you pretty much only need to prepare the one script for a voicemail, and you said, no, well, I'd actually change that. Is probably where we need to explain a little bit. So do you want to expand a little bit on...
Yeah, all right. Well, let's distinguish between the script for the call if you're actually speaking to somebody and the script for the voicemail.
Yeah.
Two different things.
Correct.
So I'm talking about the voicemail script. So if I get 3 messages in a row saying, hey, it's Dean Mannix from XYZ.
Call me back.
Accounting package. We're doing some fantastic work with childcares in relation to, improving efficiencies, reducing error rates, and we're collecting money 30% more effectively than the average as a result.
Would you leave that longer voicemail, or would you just say, hey, it's Dean Mannix, I shot you an email yesterday, keen to have a chat, call me on this.
So it could be either way, right? But let's just say that basically you're leaving that voicemail. I think if you leave exactly the same, hey, Dean, shot you an email. Hey, Dean, shot you an email. Hey, Dean, shot you an email. It's a bit repetitive. It's not really positioning you as a professional. You might as well be a robot. So it could be something as simple as in the second one, hi, Dean, I know voicemails get lost often. I called you last Tuesday, but I'm following up from that call because I really am keen to speak to you about the information in that email. Please give me a call on 8267-5432. That's 8267-5432. Look forward to your call, Dean.
Okay, so I really like that one. That one's nice and short. The double phone number and everything else is great.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just make a little tweak so that it doesn't feel overly repetitive. And the tweak there was, Dean, I know that voicemails get lost, so I thought I'd call you one more time about that email I sent out. Just that's what I'm talking about. Just not radically rewriting the world, just little tweaks so that if somebody is picking up and ignoring it, the second time they pick up, they go, oh, okay, that's not the same one. It's a little bit different. And it feels a bit more personalised.
And so this is not on the question, but this is a question without notice. So what's your feeling on referring to your previous attempts? So some people say, you shouldn't say that, I sent you an email, that's why I'm giving you a call, sort of thing. Or are you okay with that? Because I know what I know what I like to do, but I'm just going to.
I'm okay with that if it's maybe on the second time. But I think that it comes back to how much value is there for there in the client, or how much credibility does it create in the call? So the reason I like, look, I know voicemails get lost, so I thought I'd call you one more time, is that there's some credibility in that call. This is not are we there yet? There's actually some credibility in the call. If there's some value in the email, then it might be, hi, Dean, sent you an email, high level, we're improving collection rates by 30%, and I've got some great research I'd love to discuss with you in a meeting. Please give me a call. Then there's value in referring to that email. If you just say, hey, Dean, I sent you an email, please give me a call about it. I don't think so.
And I think the reason why people say not to do that is because reps go, hey, Dean, this is the 6th email I've sent you and you haven't responded. Like, I'm not on board with that at all.
It's pretty confrontational. And it's like, well, you haven't earned the right to be confrontational.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think that's the distinction that people get mixed up. They go, oh, we shouldn't refer to the previous communication. And I think particularly in a cadence, like all that sequence works together, as long as you're not making the prospect feel bad about them not answering. And that's why I like your, hey, I understand that it might have got missed. You're giving them an excuse, if you like, for almost not getting back to you. So,
correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's on us, right? So it's our job to be driving out, doing outbound. So, we've got to chase the client. I mean, if we're not okay with that, then we're going to have a really difficult time.
Well, but everything you do and say has to signal to the prospective customer that when you get together, it's going to be a valuable conversation. And everything that you do that is really generic or lazy in your prospecting process is sending a message to your target customer, your prospective customer, that you're a lazy, generic person. Now, that doesn't set them up mentally to go, I want a meeting with that person.
Yeah. So, and I think this is the challenge. A lot of people have really good first messages. They spend ages writing out their first message, or and then as they get further into the cadence, or they reach out more times, sales leaders don't provide the right level of tools. So what happens is that sort of desperation starts to build into the messaging, and then you're right. As a prospect, you're going, man, this guy already sucks. How bad's he going to be if I let him? Do business with him?
This is your first impression. Like, get it right.
Okay.
That's why I think just the whole role playing, doing this stuff in sales meetings, doing a couple of warm up calls with a fellow salesperson. It sounds corny, but that is what best practice is. If your footy team, if you saw your footy team before a game and they were all just sitting around in chairs having a chat and a laugh, and they walked out in the field, you'd be going, this is going to be really ugly.
Yeah, and a cigarette.
No, definitely not a cigarette. And but with this, with sales, it's no different. The bottom line is, if the first phone call, if your first action is live and in front of a prospective customer, you're not ready, you're not warm, you're not, and you're not improving. So let's not lose sight of the value of actually rehearsing this and playing around with it inside the sales meeting. And I think that, you know, if a team was going through the Cadence process, they should just devote their sales meeting every single week to the Cadence process.
Yep.
Because that'd be massive value for a sales meeting.
Yeah, and from a sales leader's perspective, really easy too, right? So it's just a matter of going, let's work on this part, this phase, if you remember, let's work on this phase, let's work on this part.
100%.
So, mate, I think we've answered the questions. Well, we have definitely answered all the questions that have been sent through. So is there anything you want to close out with?
No, just I guess, you know, I'm enjoying this format. I want to keep having these conversations with people. So if they want to send in, hey, have you guys got any content on this or that or this or that? Obviously, the library from a sales ITV perspective is massive, and definitely keen to share more content with people and engage in this sort of conversation.
Yep, and if anybody wants to reach out to either of us, feel free either on LinkedIn or those email addresses that we've repeated about 17 times. So maybe we should get our mobile phone numbers just engraved onto the
please leave my mobile phone alone.
No one will call it anyway.
Really, really good to sell me.
All right, Dino, thanks very much.
Love it. Take care, Marky Mark.